I feel a little bit reinvigorated with this whole YouTube thing, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that, Xbox is getting so much hate, and I think a lot of unnecessary hate. Do I think that they're perfect? No. But do I think they're worth all the hate and things like that that's going on right now? Absolutely not. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect company, but I feel like Microsoft has gone above and beyond what's necessary to satisfy gamers. And it's like people are go, oh well, all we do is wait, and I'm like, well, listen, I get that, but it's not like people are asking you to wait another 5 years. They've literally are releasing stuff already, and very shortly another game. So it's like the first party is really kind of coming into its own, and I would expect that it never subsides anymore. And what I mean by that is, and people are kind of asking me about this on social media, well, listen, they wanted to release, and they've stated like they wanted to release pre-pandemic anyway, at least 4 to 5 big games a year. Now, with that being said, they haven't been able to do that. Everybody has suffered a little bit with the pandemic, but I feel like we're at a point where that can finally happen, and this is the first year that it really will happen. Now, 4 big releases is no easy task, but I mean, when you look at it, and listen, I get it. People are going to go, well, that doesn't count because Microsoft had nothing to do with it. Listen, it doesn't really matter, right? Bethesda runs themselves. Activision's going to run themselves. Call of Duty's going to be a yearly big release from Microsoft every year. You're going to be able to count on that like clockwork. So, again, even if Microsoft had nothing to do with it, it's still something that's going to go day one into Game Pass, and that's a big release from Microsoft Studios. So, like, for instance, this year, even some of the smaller stuff, you have your Hi-Fi Rushes, you have some of the big stuff like Ghostwire Tokyo. You're also having Redfall, which is launching. Yes, controversy aside, I get it. Redfall running 30 frames per second on the Series X is a bad look, but that doesn't mean that the game is going to be bad. And I try to kind of stress that with people. And this game could in fact be their Arcane's biggest, most played game of all time, because let's face it, they haven't really had a big game in their history, and you guys might not understand that or believe that, but that's 100% the truth. Now, what I find to be interesting here is that so many people were putting negative spin on Hi-Fi Rush, which was just really a great game. Like, the story, it was funny, it was fast-paced, it was really just a great game, and people tried to downplay it or whatever and say this or that or the other thing, as you guys got into. But now there's even better news about this, so I want to get into it. Hey, I'm Crap Gamer, this is Crap Gamer Reviews with another video. Thank you so much for checking it out. I certainly appreciate it. Go ahead and give me a good thumb in. I would appreciate that as well. It certainly helps out the channel. And it means a lot to me personally. So if you guys could help me out like that, it would be cool. Again, the thing about this is we see that, if it were true that Ghostwire Tokyo didn't do well, or that Hi-Fi Rush didn't do well, then certainly the studio behind those games wouldn't be expanding, right? So now and this shout out to Idle Sloth, who covers some of this stuff, and like, this isn't even in a site or anything like that yet, but Tango Gameworks expanding their studio with almost 150 employees and opening another 30 plus jobs. So I know a lot of people didn't realize this, but Tango Gameworks, who did like the Evil Within series, Ghostwire Tokyo, Hi-Fi Rush, and are supposedly working on a brand new JRPG, they were a very small studio. And yes, they were founded by the guy who helped create Resident Evil, and he's no longer there, but apparently the studio is expanding, so they've been able to put out some games. And I feel like people are very much sleeping on what this studio could do. This could be a big, important studio for Microsoft in the future, putting out the types of games that Xbox traditionally lacks, and I feel like that is a very, very big deal. And like I said, just seeing this kind of happen the way that it has, and a little bit organically, is a cool thing. Like I said, one of my favorite games is Hi-Fi Rush. It is a throwback to a simpler time, I think, like a time possibly when when we would get risks. Like, I know people don't get tired of hearing me say this, but we used to get risks. People used to take risks when it comes to gaming, and now we don't get that anymore, right? It's like, I always say the 360 era, and it's not just because of the 360. Like, the PS3 may have had its problems, but it had some really good games, like the Uncharted series and the Resistance series, and so they had some really good games out. But the unfortunate part of this whole thing is that, we'll never see another situation like that again, unfortunately. Where we got all those type of games, and just absolutely cool to see that so many things were released at that particular point in time, right? Like, we'll never see that again. It'll just be impossible. It's just, and I hate to say that, but it will be. You'll never see like 3 Mass Effect games released in one generation, and 2 Dragon Age games with a full-on expansion in another, and 3 Dead Space games. Like, this is, I'm just being honest about this. It just is, one of those things that honestly we'll never see again. 4 Gears games, 3 Uncharted games. It's such a cool thing to see, and we'll never see that again, and it's really unfortunate. But again, seeing that this company is expanding even more, that's not a negative. People are like, oh, well, Hi-Fi Rush failed, so they probably aren't gonna, they could possibly close down the studio. Like, listen, they aren't gonna close down any of the studios. Here's the thing: Microsoft needs content. Content sometimes is gonna do better than others or whatever, but their metric is what their metric is. So we'll see what happens long term with it. But for me personally, I think that it's something that got overblown in the fact that you see these companies kind of come out and go, oh, okay, well, Microsoft is definitely expanding this, and they're continuing to work on it. I like that. That's really cool that they've been able to kind of go out there and do that. So I'm excited for the future of what they can do. I actually hope, as I get more towards the end of Ghostwire Tokyo, that they continue on that franchise. I wasn't really big into Evil Within. Like, I tried to get into the first one, and it had like the borders around it or whatever, and I didn't like it. I know they updated it and fixed it or whatever, but I just never really went back. I'm not a big horror game guy, right? Like, you go, and people might go, oh, well, you're playing Ghostwire Tokyo. Well, that's not really horror to me. It's like a supernatural kind of thing, but it's not like a horror game in my opinion. It's something that's interesting for sure, but definitely not what I would consider a horror game. So, with that being said, what do you guys think about this? Are you excited that they're expanding and bringing in new people and possibly working on like 2 or 3 games? Because I think that's cool. I mean, it's nice to see some variety there. A team that usually does stuff like Evil Within did Hi-Fi Rush and also Ghostwire Tokyo. So I'd be interested to see what they could do next. But I'm sure you guys have an opinion on this, so let me know. Rack them up. Sound off in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching. Crap Gamer, out.